The recent elections have implications for the cruise industry as Key West residents overwhelmingly vote to restrict cruises to the island. All major U.S. cruise lines have now canceled all voyages through the end of 2020, despite the CDC lifting its no-sail order, and longer cruises appear to be on the chopping block. Hello everyone, it's Wednesday, November 11th. This is Adventure in Coriolis, and it's time for some cruise news. Thank you all for watching. I invite you to please take a moment and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into this latest news. Election day is come and gone in America, and on the ballot in Key West, Florida last week were three measures that would, number one, cap the number of people who could disembark from cruise ships each day, two, limit the capacity of ships calling on the port, and three, prioritize ships by health and environmental safety records. Specifically, these measures would limit the number of people disembarking from cruise ships to only 1,500 a day, and they would limit the capacity of ships that could call on Key West to only 1,300 people. Now, considering that the smallest ship in the Carnival Cruise Line fleet has a capacity of over 2,000 guests at double occupancy, the new measures would severely limit most cruise lines from visiting Key West. Now, all three measures were approved by majorities of more than 60%, meaning residents' voices were heard loud and clear. They do not prefer cruise ships, or at least most cruise ships, to visit their island. These amendments were proposed back in March, just as cruising came to a halt after the pandemic began. The port has been a popular cruise destination for many years, mainly due to its accessibility on shorter journeys thanks to its proximity to Florida home ports. Cruise visitors have long enjoyed the southernmost point in the continental United States, the home of Ernest Hemingway, and a plethora of key lime goodies. In the year 2019, some 1 million people visited Key West via cruise ship, but cruise ship passengers only account for roughly 7% of Key West's income from tourists, based upon an estimate by the Cruise Line International Association, or CILA. This indicates that what is essentially a ban on cruise ship passengers would not be harmful to the local economy. However, the Key West Chamber of Commerce estimates the loss of the cruise industry would cost the island some $90 million in lost jobs and income. The future of the cruise port now remains unclear, though it does seem likely that without further votes by residents of Key West, it will no longer be a viable stop on itineraries of the major cruise lines. Well, no one is going to be sailing to any port anytime soon. Now, you might remember that back in March, I predicted that cruises would likely not resume for the entirety of 2020. Well, just last week, all the major cruise lines in the U.S. announced the cancellation of their sailings through the end of the year. Now, this is in spite of the CDC's no-sail order being lifted at the end of October, driven by a push from the White House and many representatives of the cruise line industry. However, in its place, on October 30th, the CDC installed the Framework for Conditional Sailing Order, which lays out a phased approach to safe and responsible resumption of passenger cruises. Now, in a statement, the CDC Director Robert Redfield stated, quote, "This framework provides a pathway to resume safe and responsible sailing. It will mitigate the risk of COVID-19 outbreaks on ships and prevent passengers and crew from seeding outbreaks at ports and in the communities where they live." He continued, "The CDC and the cruise industry have a shared goal to protect crew, passengers, and communities, and will continue to work together to ensure that all necessary public health procedures are in place before cruise ships begin sailing with passengers." The order lays out a four-phase approach for the return to cruising that includes new health protocols, including mandatory testing and capacity restrictions. While the cruise lines continue to sell voyages from U.S. home ports beginning on November the 1st, 2020, meaning that they're able to be booked on their websites, there is currently no timeline for cruises to resume from U.S. home ports, and these will only be permitted after the cruise lines complete the required steps, which include a series of mock voyages with volunteers who will play the role of passengers. It seems once this order was issued, the cruise lines realized it was just not possible for them to complete and prove satisfactory the four phases of this order, so they canceled all voyages through the end of the year. Now, personally, I think the cancellations could continue even after the beginning of the new year, especially now that the pandemic continues to rage on once again. I myself am booked for the inaugural sailing of Carnival's new Mardi Gras on February 6th, so I am hopeful that things advance so that sailing goes on as planned. At this time, I invite you to please subscribe to the channel, as I will be covering that special sailing live from on board the Mardi Gras. Speaking of the Mardi Gras, it began its second round of sea trials just a few days ago, and this brings the ship one step closer to being ready for sailing. And finally today, while it's still not clear when sailing might resume for U.S. cruise ship passengers, it looks like things will be restricted to voyages less than 8 days when that does occur. Now, just last week, over the past week actually, visitors to Carnival's booking engine noticed that no sailings of 8 days or longer from the U.S. were available to book through October of 2021. Now, Carnival has not made any official statement on the cancellation of these 8 days and longer voyages, which would include their Carnival Journey sailings. It does stand to reason that they will not sell them for some time after cruises actually resume. The only exception to this appears to be a few longer sailings from Australia and Europe that are still available to book on Carnival's booking engines. In plans for potential protocols submitted to the CDC just a couple months ago, the cruise lines did detail how they might safely return to sailing, and in this list of proposals was the idea of shorter voyages to cruise line operated ports. So, if the lines move to cancel longer itineraries to more exotic ports of call for the next year or so, that wouldn't be a complete surprise. We'll continue to keep an ear out for official word on these voyages from Carnival and the other cruise lines. That's all the news for today. I want to thank you all for watching. I join you in hoping that we all get to return to the high seas very soon. I really miss cruising and can't wait to get out on the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below and subscribe to the channel for more cruise content coming very soon. And until next time, I'll see you on the next adventure.